Everyone, I want to jump on real fast before we get into the episode. One, wanted to mention that Collin has something that he mentions at the very end of the episode. So I need to make sure that you guys listen to the entire episode because of the way that it's threaded. By the time we get to the very end, it's all going to make sense. Everything that he mentions there should be a link that is in the show notes. If you don't see it, then DM me or DM Collin, and then we'll be able to help you out with that. But I think it's going to be a really, really awesome cause, and it'll be awesome to see him do that. Secondly, is that there is an event that's happening in March here in Denver. So if you're in Denver, I'm going to go see if I can go help, support a brother while he's out there. I'm not going to mention any more about it, but that will just watch my space, but watch Instagram, watch the socials, watch Collin's space, because I'm sure he's going to mention more stuff about that too, what's going to happen in March in preparation for what's going to happen in May. Next, roughly about the 19 to 21 minute window, there's a technical glitch. I don't know what happens. Collin's audio and video get kind of glitchy and kind of drops off a little bit, but then after that, it's just smooth sailing, and it's a great episode. It's also engaging. About 3/4 of the way through, there is a breathing exercise that he gave us for us high performers, essentially. So you don't necessarily need to be an athlete, but just as a high performer, or if you just need energy, is what it sounds like. That's that he gives us something for us to attempt and do. Everybody, thank you so much for joining Renegade Radio. This is the one podcast meant for rebels, for renegades, misfits, square pegs in the round hole, and for those of us who just do not like the status quo. This is Renegade Radio, season number 2, episode 007, featuring Collin Chartier. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Renegade Radio. We've got a really special episode here for you today. I feel honored. I'm almost feeling like I'm fanboying, just maybe a little bit. Guys, this is going to be a really great conversation. Like most conversations, I don't know where this is necessarily going to lead because every guest has something special and unique, and we're just going along for the ride. I have Collin Chartier here with us, joining for the conversation today. Collin, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve. Thanks for reaching out and asking me to be on here. Excited for a nice conversation.
Absolutely, man. Now, I've done just a little bit of homework. So for the audience, so I know I knew of Collin probably about a year and a half ago. We have a mutual friend who has started a fitness company called Aeon Training. Yeah. And so Collin was hosting, he was doing a breathwork exercise for us. And Collin, I've never told you this personally. I don't think I've ever even messaged you about this. And if I remember this right, and Collin, obviously correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my first introduction to him was let us hold our breath. I think we do like 3 deep breath inhales and exhales. Then we hold our breath. Yeah. And if I remember right, we had to do 10 to 15 push-ups and then sprint and then see if we can make it all the way back or something like that, right?
Yeah. So we were doing some active apnea training. Which is one of the quickest ways to create buy-in in a group. Because as soon as, you mention breathwork, people go to all over the place because they're just like, I don't know what to think. I mean, it's such a vague word, especially in the, when you're talking to athletes, like, how does it relate to me?
Right.
So I love to start, group sessions that way. It's just like, all right, let's hold our breath and walk and count your steps. Let's hold our breath and you do as many push-ups as you can. Let's hold our breath and do sprints. And because you feel immediately like that wall.
Oh, yes. I will attest to it. You feel something. You definitely feel something. That was my personal introduction to Collin. So you guys at home will not necessarily have to do it unless you're holding your breath right now doing push-ups. But
I'd say if you're listening to this right now, pause. Take 3 breaths and go count how many push-ups you can do.
Man,
if you can do 40 or 50 push-ups on one breath, like you're very high CO2 tolerance.
Oh man, then you're probably a Navy SEAL or some kind of spec ops if you're able to pull that off. Yeah, but before we jump too far ahead, so you guys already know that we're going to be getting into we're going to be talking about breath work just a little bit. But before we get into that, just so Collin, you can introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, like what's your origin story. Give us all the background leading up to where we are right now.
Definitely a long story. I'll try to keep it short. But I grew up, dad, mom. My dad was in the Navy, 2 brothers, so we moved around quite a bit. But yeah, I think about like a military kind of household. Dad ran a tight ship and we worked hard. I got into, sports at a young age, playing soccer, swimming, and very competitive with my brothers. Then when I started really I found I wanted to be a swimmer, like a high level swimmer, D1 level. That was the goal I had in high school. I was like, can I swim, be recruited to D1 level? And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be swimming with Katie Ledecky, who is
really?
The most winning swimmer in the world. And so my comparison quickly, in practice when she would lap me, I'd be like, there's no way I can be a swimmer. So I turned to triathlon about midway through high school. That's where I found it. And a friend had invited me, and I didn't know what I was doing, did the whole thing in running shoes on the bike, and just go out and have fun. I think it was Olympic distance or maybe sprint distance, and I got 4th overall, 900 people. The guy who won it was a pro. Wow. And so that felt good, I think, to be doing well, and in comparison to where I was in swimming. And it was a really fun atmosphere. Everyone was hanging out. There was food trucks and beer trucks and, family. It was a very cool atmosphere compared to swim meets where it's all on deck. All the people watching are in the stands. So to participate and even spectate, it's a cool event. And so I started to get more involved in triathlon, joined a team out of Richmond, Virginia called Endorphin Fitness. And so there's a junior elite series, so 18 and under. And there are 6-7 races around the US where you have teams and you compete. You can compete if you're not on a team as well. And it's all draft legal triathlon. So the same kind of format that is in the Olympics. Draft legal meaning on a bike, you can be in a group, just like a peloton as a cyclist.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Whereas the half Ironmans, other triathlons that you would likely do, are going to be draft, non-draft legal. So there's at least 3 bike lengths in between people, because you get tremendous advantage from being in someone's slipstream in aerodynamics, because somebody out front is breaking that wind, and oftentimes it could be 30, 40, 50 watts more power to be at the front than behind. So huge saving and an energy savings. And that is the ultimate limiter of endurance is energy. So calories,
for sure.
Efficiency.
For sure.
Okay, where were we? So that's high school. Yeah. And then I still kind of wanted to swim. I took a year off out of high school. Didn't know what I was going to do. So I joined another team to see if I could really make it as a swimmer. And that just reinforced that was not my path. And ended up getting recruited to go to Marymount University in Virginia. They had a triathlon program, the first in the nation, where they had some funding and coaching and treated it like a varsity sport. So it was really cool to be on the cutting edge of that collegiate triathlon series, which now is a Title IX sport, at least for women. And so that was the goal really going into college, was to be a pro triathlete. Got my pro license in college, and then as soon as I finished my last exam, I was out in Colorado with my uncle, and he was like, come out here and train. You got a place. So I could just put my head down and focus, because it demands a lot of training. You have 3 sports, plus you're doing whatever physical therapy and strength exercises if you can, and altitude training. So add some extra fatigue.
What was that like? Your first time coming to Colorado, and then you went through your first training session. How did you feel?
It was a big difference. I think it took a good year and a half plus to become able to do what I was doing in Virginia, right? The intensity. It's the intensity of the workouts, because the recovery takes so much longer. Yeah. And so I really pushed myself, because I was alone out here training all day, and I didn't really see anyone. The only people I saw were people at the grocery store and the lifeguards at the pool. So like training in isolation is super difficult. And then when you're fatigued, I was sleeping 10 hours a night plus napping. Like I was destroyed. I was a zombie of a person, and just pushing myself as hard as I could.
Oh my God. Now, was that just basically because you just didn't have a sense of community around you, and that's why you felt like you had to drive so hard?
I think I didn't really have a mentor or coach who knew the pro triathlon world. So I was going at it pretty alone. It took me several years to start to build a little community in Boulder and get to know other triathletes. Because even the type of triathlons I was doing was trying to qualify for Tokyo Olympics. So it wasn't just like Ironmans and half Ironmans. There's a pretty big division between triathlon of there are the pro world trying to do Olympics, and then there's just age group doing Ironmans, half Ironmans.
Oh, interesting. I was not aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, so most people not even aware. It's just it's a very it can be very isolating.
Now, this is just my own ignorance, and so I'm just going to wildly hope somebody else out in the audience is not leaving me alone in this ignorance. But could you separate, what are the differences between triathlon and Ironman?
Yeah, Ironman's a brand, and so they've, I guess, taken or coined the distance of a full distance triathlon. Full distance meaning that's the Ironman distance.
Gotcha.
And that's 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and marathon run.
Dang.
Wow. Right. And then half of that is half Ironman. And then you kind of go more toward the Olympics, the Olympic distance, because that's what the distance they used in the Olympics is a 1.5 kilometer swim, 40K bike, and 10K run. So 1 mile, 24 miles, and 6 miles.
Wow. Yeah, I've always joked, at least from the swimming part, the reason why I've never attempted one is swimming is definitely my weakness, and I feel like as soon as I'd get ankle deep, I would drown. I'd just be like, I'm out, guys. I'm not doing this.
I think it's one of the hardest things to learn as an adult is to swim.
It was hard for me as a kid. I can't imagine now.
Yeah. So, are you a runner? Biker?
Yeah, runner. I could tolerate the bike.
So, that feeling of accelerating while you run, the mechanics of accelerating and going faster, that does not translate into going faster swimming. That's what the difficult part is. It's a completely different way to feel and to think.
Yeah,
because you have to be feeling the water, and you can't just accelerate. You have to work with how to accelerate and catch water, and body positioning, and there's buoyancy. There's so much to it. It's so hard to learn as an adult. So I've seen people just 8-10 years just struggle, and occasionally someone becomes good, decent enough to compete at this level. Yeah, well, she's insane.
Oh man.
But yeah, that's my triathlon journey. That's what brought me out to Colorado.
So I want to know, and we're gonna kind of ride this thread throughout this episode. I want to know, what was your one? They're kind of twin sides of the same coin as far as what was your mindset like when you were in this phase, when you're here in Colorado and you started training, and then who would you say you were at that time, like your identity at that time?
Yeah, identity was definitely a triathlete. So I was all in to making that work. Unknown how financially it could work, but know that other people are doing it. So there is a way forward. and I knew I needed to get results and race well. So training was insanely important. Every day doing the training, working with coach. So mindset, I guess, was all in, and definitely toward the end of my career, like it still very much was, I was a horse with blinders on. Like think of horse racing. Like there's these little blinders on their eyes to make sure they don't see everything else that's going on. So they could only focus directly ahead of them and be in the race. And that's how I would say the best describes my mindset is, yeah, there's a whole world out there, but I'm choosing not to see it. And so it's very much in a bubble and very ego driven because I didn't even allow myself to see a way. There wasn't another way. So that kind of stubbornness is, I think, really important to achieving something, anything.
Okay, so so there's two separate questions I have in regards to that, following that line of thought. The first question is, by that type of training and with that intense amount of focus, do you, how do I even phrase this? Do you feel as though, were you attempting to prove something to yourself or to somebody else because of that type of blinder mentality kind of deal? Or was that just because you knew that that's what it was going to take in order to achieve that professional Olympic level type of performance?
I think there was a couple of things, two things primarily going on, right? Like I was toward the end, 2022, I started working with a sports psychologist, and I could give him all the right answers, right? We're talking about fuel and what's toxic fuel versus what's jet fuel. So toxic fuel is like comparison and, driven by ego, the need to, get approval and praise. And like jet fuel would be just like joy and abundance and, something greater than yourself. And so like I knew how to give all the right answers to feel like I was giving rocket fuel. But deep down, I knew that's the conscious level, conscious thought of like, yeah, I'm doing this for a good reason. Yeah, I'm doing this, either for the glory of God, or I'm doing this because I have these abilities. But really, there's a subconscious part which drives all motivation and all belief system. And so that part, I truly wasn't aware of. Like I was not aware enough to know what was really driving me, because it just felt like expectation and pressure. Like I had to be the best in the world. And I wouldn't be, and I wouldn't, wasn't able to say where that was coming from. But up until now, so that if we skip ahead to the journey, I did professional triathlon for 8 years. Then I got suspended for doping in 2023. And at the time I was 11th in the world and the #1 US triathlete. So it was a pretty big fall in this pretty small sport. So that was I guess you could say, the beginning of this identity death or ego death of self-discovery of like what was driving me to do things that wasn't really aligned with my values or who I wanted to be. So both of that question, right, is two parts. One is consciously I could say like, oh, I'm just driven because I'm good at this. I want to do this. But subconsciously, a lot was tied into upbringing, approval from parents, or, confusing praise from parents as their love, right? That can be easily mixed early on in childhood.
Let's go just a little bit, track back just a little bit, just before 2023, and just kind of leading up to this moment where you get caught with doping. Like, what was, I'm just curious as to like how do we get to that point? Like, were you, because of that drive of like, I want to be the best in the world, that it was almost like the mentality of win at all cost?
Yeah, there's, I think, accumulation of a lot of small decisions. And that decision, win at all costs, is probably from early on, where I was like, okay, like I'm going to make the sacrifices. I'm going to see my parents, a couple days a year. I'm going to, not see family. I'm not going to date. I'm not going to have the social life. I'm not going to like drink. I'm not, then you start making your entire life really small. And from there, it's easier to make decisions in isolation without accountability or group. I think like it's a accumulation of decisions that would even lead up to something like that. Because then at this point, you're like, oh, well, there's nothing to lose. Because I've already kind of gotten rid of everything meaningful in life. So,
yeah. The interesting thing about that is like something that I've been learning recently is that the difference of being able to look, and you've actually kind of hinted at this already a couple times just throughout your story, of looking at the way of the world of one of two worldviews, of either abundance, love, all the good things, fear, scarcity, lack, and all the bad things. And because of that, because of the, whatever fear or whatever scarcity that there remains, that seems to be one of the symptoms that develops, is fear causes us to separate, and we start isolating ourselves, and it becomes more now a matter of self-protection and self-promotion. And so we start driving a lot of these, just as you mentioned, a lot of these smaller decisions into what would just affect me without necessarily thinking about other people. So that's really fascinating to be able to hear from you, from like a real world story of what was going on at that time. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and start training. I'm sorry.
There was a lot of like fear and scarcity for sure around, not being good enough, not being worthy, money, like not having enough. Like it was very fear-based behavior and driven.
Oh, fascinating. If it's okay with you, I'm hoping we do a part 2, because that would be really, really interesting to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to get more into, so now we know where we're at, but so let's now take us through the story of how you get into breath work. So after, you're getting banned from the professional world of triathlon. So what starts happening? How do we start getting into the Collin that we know today?
Yeah, it started with a pretty immediate like idea that popped in my head. So I had a month that I got told I was suspended, and then a month later the news would break. So in between that month, I saw my parents. So I made sure to see people in person to tell them who were close to me. And then right when the story broke, like I wanted to get away from all of that, Boulder, Denver, Colorado. And I ended up going on a bike packing trip. So I was like, I want to go bike to Argentina from California. So, got the things I needed to get, and just took off from my brother's place in California, and biking 160 miles a day, 150 miles a day. I would just bike for 10, 12 hours, camp, or find a hostel, and made my way through Mexico pretty quickly. It was like I went Baja, took a ferry to Mazatlan, all through central Mexico, even climbed the tallest mountain in Mexico, Pico Orizaba, just like over 18,000 feet, which I biked up to 14,000 feet. It was like insane, just like sandy Jeep road. And so some epic adventures thrown in there. A lot of fitness, because that's really how I knew how to express my body, right? And it felt good to move forward. Like if that's an analogy for life, just like, okay, well, at least I can keep going forward. So Mexico, great trip. And then I was in Central America. I was going through Nicaragua, and that's where really for the first time I had broken my itinerary. Like I had a Excel spreadsheet. I knew how many days to take in each country so I could get to Ushuaia, Argentina by like before Christmas. So I was very much like an athlete, like, oh, there's the goal. Okay, let's break it down. How many days to get there? How many kilometers? How many miles? So it was very much, that's how I thought. Like, there's the goal, point A to B. And in Nicaragua, that was the first time I broke the plan. And that was with this breathwork retreat. So it was a big deal to, at that point in my life, that was the only thing I could control. So to give that up was scary. It's like, okay, well, if I give that up, like, I don't know really where I'm going in life. Because at least I knew up through December where I would go. And I ended up at this breathwork retreat and experienced some holotropic breathing that really, I mean, what people would call psychedelic breathwork. It was a session where it was like 2-3 hours and I was like laying down and sweating buckets, like sweating. I'm like, it's not that hot. And seeing memories of childhood and processing that kind of memories and trauma. So it was very interesting, like unexpected. So that was my, I guess, first experience into breathwork, and it was definitely the most profound one. I didn't understand the science behind it. It was definitely presented in a very hippie setting. So it was so important to me because as soon as I finished, I felt completely light and liberated. Like the shame and guilt that was just, crushing me down from keeping me in survival mode. And now I understand a lot of this is the nervous system, and protecting the nervous system was opened up. And I've actually felt like, whoa, like there's hope and there's joy and there's like, I could see the future. So it was a very profound experience for me.
Okay, so when you're breaking itinerary and you find this breathwork deal, what was it that intrigued you in the first place to seek this out?
I had a good friend in the sport who's been in the sport for many years in triathlon and a coach. And he had mentioned shortly after my suspension, like, oh, you should look into breathwork. Like, these are some books. And I was like, I don't, at that point I was like, I don't really read books. So no thanks.
I don't have time to read books.
Yeah, I don't have time, don't have energy. So that was already the seed planted. And I'd already like pushed it away because that was truly how I was operating as an athlete. Like, no, either there's one way, like I got it. Like, I don't want to, the horse with blinders. That was outside of the scope. And I had been doing some therapy sessions from betterhelp.com on the side of the road, in El Salvador and Mexico. Wasn't really, it was causing me to think through a few things, but I had always been able to give like the right answers. And she was like, well, you need to journal. And I just couldn't. I couldn't sit with myself and journal. So, yeah, for someone, I guess, like me, like the breathwork was far more profound and resonated with me than like a talk therapy. Yeah, so after that trip, I made it through Colombia. That's when I decided I'm ready to go home. But that breathwork experience was a huge part of me being like, I'm good. I'm ready to go home. And I came back to Colorado and I was like, well, how do I explain or share my experience with breathwork with people who like, this would not be very approachable? Because even I don't really understand it. And so I took a couple-month breathwork certification course and just studied and, podcast books. That is how I've come to see and be able to present breathwork to athletes and to nervous system regulation. And I'm working with Commerce City Police Department right now. And, just because it came from a place I experienced it like in a very hippie setting, now I have the language to speak scientifically, like in the physiology, what's going on when we do certain breathwork techniques. And so breathwork can be for everyone, and it can mean many different things to people. So I try to, like, with yourself and this group with Aeon, like, what is the breath work that's going to be best suited for them, right? And a lot of it, is more so mental training. That's why I love the apnea training stuff, because it's not low oxygen. It's just like this automatic response from the nervous system. And it's a trainable level. Like you can easily train that to be less reactive and be able to respond. And so that's the nervous system reactivity. People who like lose their temper quickly or just find themselves very reactive. This is an amazing tool to just create a little space so that their body isn't reacting before their mind.
That's and the other part that I have to say, granted, with your session that we did that night, a year ago or a year and a half ago, the thing that I would probably, and I think a lot of people, especially athletes, appreciate about it is that it is an immediate response that you feel, that you realize that, like this is a thing. Right. And it's, and then just like you said, it is trainable. So again, as an athlete, we just want to get better at it. It's like, well, we don't want to feel like that again. I don't want to hit that wall. So that's it. Yeah. So I have to say that was definitely something I definitely appreciate about what you offer and how you coached people. One of the things that I was making notes here. Where are we at? I think we'll be okay. So there's something I want to touch on, if you're okay going into this, and if not, then I'll edit this part out or whatnot. Because I think from two perspectives: one, from an athletic standpoint, from a professional athlete, and then from a man's standpoint, shame and guilt. That you said that was crushing you when you were, as soon as you got banned, and then now you're traveling forward, and we're making this trip down to Argentina. Could you speak about a little bit more of what that was like mentally, what was going on inside of you, emotionally, what was happening inside of you? Because I think a lot of guys are probably experiencing, maybe not at necessarily a high level, but maybe because of just something that has happened in their past, that they may not either know how to express it. They don't even know what's happening to them. But for somebody like you who's been able to process and actually work your way through it and identify that, could you speak more to that?
Yeah. I could unpack as an athlete, like I guess the way I grew up and the way I thought about improving was pain tolerance. I was like, if I work harder, if I can suffer more pain, like I'll be better. That drove a lot of my actions and my emotions, because pain was the, I guess, number one emotion in my life that I had familiarity with. So that, like, I was generally a happy person. But when I look back through childhood memories or any memories that stand out, it's usually memories of the most pain I was in. And the same thing, like I can remember workouts very clearly and vividly where I was like pushing beyond the pain threshold, because when you're beyond the pain threshold, there's actually euphoria. There's like you're doing so much damage to your body that there's a rush of euphoria, adrenaline. And the lack of emotional awareness was a huge part in that too, because I didn't know I was feeling lonely or sad or angry, or didn't have longing. Like there wasn't a vocabulary up here. Like I didn't have the vocabulary to know what I was feeling. So the processing and all that is only the last 2 years of actually being like, like, how did this all happen? Like, what was I feeling? Why did this happen? And what did I feel in childhood? And how were, talking to my parents of like, what was life like when I was 3 and 4 and 5 and we were in Spain and my mom was sick and my dad was deployed and there was 2 young, 3 kids under 5, to understand how brain development even worked. Like this is all after the fact. There's a book from Gabor Mater, Scattered Minds. That book talks about like, where does ADHD come from? Because I got a diagnosis last year for the first time. And it made a lot of sense of like, oh, like, yeah, this is how my brain like works. I was still achieving high levels of success as in academics and in sport. But to know like the obsessiveness comes from like that. And then the lack of ability to, now that I stopped exercising for 5 hours a day, like that was the cure for my mind, because that's obsessive exercise addiction. And now I'm like realizing my inability to complete like very small tasks because I'm not motivated to do them.
Oh, interesting.
So only recently I've been like, man, like this is hard to deal with. And it talks about childhood development, the first like 3 years of life, attunement, which is eye contact from your caregiver so that you feel heard and seen. That is hugely important for certain brain development for attention deficit disorder. So like,
no way.
This is just a example of like the process I went through post doping to make sense of how numb I was and unaware of how I felt. And it was very guarded. I think, see, that was what the athlete side would. And then you said as a man, I felt that a lot of things, right? Like this ideal of a man to be a provider and supporter. And like, I am just kind of feeling selfish and just doing this sport and knowing like I am trying my best to provide an income, like a career that I could provide. Like that's what ultimately was driving me. I was like, I just want that. But then when I would achieve a level of money, I was like, that's not enough. This guy's making $1 million a year. That's the next goal. So as much as I won races and started earning more money, it was never enough. Even though the ultimate goal that I was like, I want to be provider and support a family. And I knew it's like, it was very incompatible with the way I grew up too. And I was even a head youth pastor at one point at church in Virginia when I was in college. And like that idea of like service and community. And I'd just been living kind of this opposite life as a triathlete where it was always about me protecting my energy, focused on what my training needed to be. And even to the point of like, I needed to train with only people who would help me become better and not, So it felt I guess a lot of shame and then guilt. And then once that was just normal. And then once I got suspended from doping, then I've realized like there was a lot of shame and guilt over, I guess, my actions. And I think that can cloud the ability to like look into the future with hope. Because every time you think or brought back to that moment, that mistake, that's me living in the energy of that shame and guilt. So forgiveness, either from myself and from others and from God, like all of those are super important to think about, right? Like you can let that go, but there's still energy that's stored in your body. Because as the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I don't know if you read that, but it's a great book talking about trauma and energy and events that are stored in the nervous system and stored in the body. So just because you may have like stopped thinking about it doesn't mean it's still not actually in your body acting out. And that's where the breath work really, I felt the difference. And if you look at breath is our only connection between our mind and our body. And so the power of our breath is that we can start to get out of our heads and into our body and clearing out anything else in there.
Man, just so much what you said there, a lot of wisdom. And thank you for sharing. I find that there are some men that in probably the last year and a half or 2 years, which I'm saying that I'm repeating myself with them, different guys, same message. And the reason why I really appreciated you being able to share that side of how you were processing shame, because how whether it's just American society or Western culture, just in general, how on us guys that our value seems to be so much placed on what we do and not necessarily who we are. And so that idea of being able to continually produce in order to meet some kind of weird KPI that, you know, somehow we're coming up with it, but it's never, like you said, it's never enough.
Never enough.
And it's, so if a guy loses his job or, you know, has, you know, can no longer compete, then somehow that identity and value is ripped away from us. And now again, that shame and things, just that guilt crushes us as guys. But I think just needs to be a different conversation around that, about the value of a man. And the second part to it is that the identifying of, like you were saying, being numb to emotions, and we're not able to process that properly to where, you know, it starts showing up in other ways. And so in such case that you just shared, that the body is just going to store stuff because we didn't know how to process. So we're just going to shove it way down. And, you know, now it's in my psoas, or, you know, or it's in my, in my neck.
Massive issues. Massive low back, psoas.
Low back.
I was injured my entire career. Right. And I still achieved insane results, but like that injuries were just part of it, because I just pushed through and ignore my body. Because I think to reach a certain level, at least how I developed, is about shutting down the signals of the body, saying, no, I'm going to keep pushing, keep going. That creates, you know, in one coin, it creates resiliency and determination. So even traits that are praised in our society. And then on the flip side, it's like, after you achieve a certain level, like, it's diminishing returns. You now have to like trust you are resilient, and you don't have to keep proving that over and over and over again by keep on, you know, pushing yourself down and injuring yourself, and coming to a place where you got to define what winning is for you, because I think it's easy to get caught up in what winning is for everyone else in comparison to others. And as soon as we start to do that, it'll never be enough, because we'll finish what our goal was in a race, and then we'll be like, oh, but I could have done a little faster. I could have done that a little more, because we're still comparing ourselves to other people. And so the work I do now with athletes, with coaching, is all the things I wish I did. And so that's not just the training plans, but like nervous system, how to regulate your nervous system, use breath work, different techniques, sauna, cold plunge, and then full mental training. So the mental training is breaking down, right? Consciously, what are you trying to do? But okay, let's really break down subconsciously. What does the sport really mean to you? Is it because you really want to feel seen and validated, acknowledged for your existence? and just to have awareness of that, and then start to reprogram, what does winning mean for you here? And when you can do that, you'll always be a winner. And guess how winners feel? Good. You can always feel good.
That's
while
true.
You're doing a race and you're doing your training, because you know what winning is, and it's achievable, and there's a process. As long as you put winning way outside of yourself and depending on other people, depending on a result in the race, because you don't know, that depends on other people, depends on the people in the race, you'll never be a winner.
That's really good, man. That'll preach. Before I forget, just so I'm sharing information as well with you, something that I've been reading quite a bit that you may be able to find useful for some of the other clientele that you're working with now, that you can add to your arsenal, unless you've already read it. But it's called "The Mountain Is You." It's about self-sabotage. It's starting to explain some of the things, like it's out of protection is the reason why we're sabotaging ourselves, is what it comes down to. And you've touched on that a couple times. And anyway, it's just really brilliant about it, as far as like the body, body keeping the score. It kind of fits under that same kind of context, but it just shows like the different levels of, we won't allow ourselves to be happy, so we'll pull it down, or we're hit resistance, or whatever. Anyway, fascinating stuff there. What I want to get into right now, let's go ahead and just kind of start approaching a little bit of a close, because I want to, again, respect your time. And if you're willing, I'd love to be able to have a second part to this, because there are just so many different little trails and rabbit holes and things that we can definitely venture down. If you're willing to right now, because there may be people who have obviously heard of breath work at some point, because of whether yoga or meditation or, something along those lines. But would you be willing to actually lead us through something now?
Yeah. What would be your goal for that? What would be what you're looking for?
So let's go with something that, because this podcast is going to be aimed our generic audience for the most part, or demographic for the audience, high achievers, high performers, entrepreneurs, people who are looking to, similar to you, who are like, athletes who are just looking at achieving the next high level. So there's probably things that we're running into as far as, energy depletion, running high, anxiety, things like that, anything that fits under that category. So either something to either help sustain energy to help us get through the day whenever we hit that 2 to 3 p.m. slump, or something to help just kind of calm us down whenever we feel like thoughts are starting to spiral out and we feel like we're losing control.
Good. Yeah, I'll actually give a challenging one. It's called it's basically a different version of box breathing, but it's called Savitri Pranayama, and I've been doing it 20 minutes every morning, and it makes a huge difference in your energy.
Oh, interesting.
Initially, if you do 20 minutes, you're just like, each breath is a struggle. And then like the next day it did better. And the next day it gets better. And then all of a sudden you're like 20 minutes comes up and you're like, whoa. And then the energy throughout the day is incredible.
Oh, interesting.
Even with lack of sleep, I've been losing sleep, waking up at 4 a.m. or earlier to sometimes get this in before the day, because it's that important right now.
Oh, cool.
So,
okay.
Yeah. It's going to be an 8-part inhale, 8-second inhale, 4-second hold, 8-second exhale, 4-second hold, in and out through the nose. And it's done as a 3-part breath. So the first bit is all through the diaphragm and stomach. Think of like 4 seconds as your belly button coming out. It's filling up like a balloon. And then you feel your rib cage coming out. And then you feel it in your chest. So it's always from bottom up. And then on the exhale, you're really paying attention to exhaling from the belly button coming in the whole time. Like you are bringing your belly button in toward your spine.
Gotcha.
So it's active. You really have to pay attention. Especially in the beginning, you're going to be like kind of jerky on the inhale. And then your goal is to make it a very smooth inhale the whole time and very controlled exhale the whole time.
And then quick reminder on the counts. What is it on the inhale?
It's 8 in, 4 hold, 8 out.
Gotcha.
4 hold.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's 24 seconds of breath.
Gotcha.
And so you start to do that, your regular respiratory rate is anywhere from like 13 to 16 breaths a minute. And you get a much higher CO2 levels in the body. And so this is very important. We're mostly overbreathers. And so you oxygenate the body by slowing down your breath rate. Because hemoglobins in the red blood cells only release the oxygen into circulation in the presence of carbon dioxide. And so now we're supersaturating CO2 levels so that more hemoglobin release oxygen into the tissue, to the brain, to the recovering muscles. So if you're hyperventilating, you're depleting whole body oxygen. As much as you breathe in, right? Part one is breathing in, alveoli bringing oxygen into red blood cells and hemoglobin. But now it's just in your blood. Part 2 is releasing oxygen out into circulation.
And then you're supposed to do this for 20 minutes, is what you said?
Start with 10, but yeah.
Okay, good call.
I do 20.
Good call.
Yeah. But don't just do 3 or 4 minutes. It's going to be so challenging. Like the first 3 or 4 minutes are always the most challenging. Like you really get into it when you post that, 10 minutes.
Gotcha. Collin, one last question. that I have for you, and I'm definitely going to give this a shot, and I'll shoot you a DM later to let you know I didn't pass out. So what I'm always interested in is the wisdom that all of us learn through circumstances which are in this, for lack of better terminology, just challenging.
Yeah.
If you had to go back, this is, I guess, a two-part question. If you had to go back and talk to younger Collin, this is actually going to end up being 3 questions, but if you had to go back and talk to younger Collin, what would you coach him? What would you tell him? So that's one. Number 2, for the athletes that are in the age bracket that you were in 3 years ago, what would you coach them? Like, what would you tell them now? And then lastly is that what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned that you want to be able to, that you don't think people are learning, that they're not getting from social media or from the gurus or podcasts or whatever?
I guess question number 1, like, what would I tell my younger self? Which I would say nothing. Like, I had to live through all the experiences to be where I'm at now. Right? I don't think you can live in regret, because there's nothing you could do to change. And everything you went through is why you are who you are now. And so I wouldn't change that. And that's now believing through challenging times that all of life will always work for you. Like, if you do not trust that, every single challenge in your life is going to be extremely difficult, where you'll question everything. When instead you could be like, okay, like, what am I being taught here? What am I here to learn? What am I here to pay attention? What can I change?
Yeah.
And then 2, what was that question?
About so athletes that are currently the age that you were at 3 years ago, who are high competitive. Yeah. High competitors.
Yeah. I used to coach another pro while I was a pro, and like, his training was phenomenal, right? Like, near world class, with power numbers, 35 hours a week, like, consistently, boom, 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 but would never perform in a race, like, would always tank. And so I had awareness of like, okay, it's not a physical thing, but I didn't know how to coach him, because that was me too. Like, I just didn't have the awareness of the mental skills and belief systems and how that impacted how we perform. Because just training, it will not bring you the result. And that's the part 3 too, is like, your training plan does not make you better. Like, you have to be better, and you will transcend your training plan. Yes, you still have to do the work, but everyone is doing the work. So the real difference between achieving a high level is the belief systems work, the mindset, and not just mindset. I don't like to use that word. People think it's like one thing, you just set your mind. It's not. There can be 10 to 20 mental skills that you can work on and train on to improve your mental strength, resiliency, awareness, control, all of this. And so that's what I would bring to most people, and most athletes who want to train for any event want to find a coach who can give them a training time. And so I would say they're not coaches, they're trainers. There's a difference between someone who makes training plans, and that's not to discredit them. They're some of the best in the world using science and metabolic testing and lactate testing and all that. It's extremely important to have sound training. But nowadays, there's just so much of it with AI that it's kind of like, okay, information is free nowadays. So what is coaching? And it's the relationship with someone, because that's accountability, and someone who's going to train your nervous system to accept the load, the training load, so you can recover from it and then keep on improving. And then your mindset and belief systems. So it's like, knowing high performance is being sold to you everywhere. Recovery techniques, and buy these and do that. That's not performance. that's just part of the ecosystem of what makes up this industry.
Yeah. Absolutely. Collin, thank you so much for coming here and spending some time with us. Again, I'm really hoping we can do part 2 because you have so much, and I think we just barely skimmed the surface of.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
Everything.
Before we go,
yeah.
Part of my effort of like coming back into sport, and I want to do it in a way that has a positive impact. Because I previously did it was all about like me and building me up. I've partnered with another pro triathlete down in Cozumel, Mexico, to do a charity run. So raising money for a foundation, Mark, which helps children with leukemia.
Oh, cool.
And so it's fundraising for that. And Martine and I are going to do 200 kilometers in circles around Cozumel Island on May 8th. So that's coming up.
There are worse places to do circles.
Yes, but it's hot. It's sometimes humid. Like 10 miles at a time, straight roads. Oof. No shade. Oof. So I'm terrified. I have, that's over like 120 something miles. Oh, and it's coming up quick. So my next thing, if you want to support at all, you come to Wash Park. I think the last weekend in March, I'm going to do 24 hours at Wash Park.
Oh, are you really?
Cool. Yeah, so people can join, hang out. I definitely need the support.
Yeah, I'll come hang out with the brother. I could probably do about 6 miles at most, and then I'm smoked.
Yeah, you could do 2-3 laps, Wash Park. But that's where I'm scared, because ultras is a different beast. Like I wasn't doing that. Like mentally, like you don't feel good. You're not going to feel good. What's your will to keep going? And so that it's a pretty scary thing for me.
I guess you
just that's what I got coming up.
Just keep David Goggins blasting in your ear.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what I'll do, Collin, is I'll make sure that I can link, like if you have a donation page for you and Martine, that I'll be more than happy to be able to share that out. Awesome. And what about where do you hang out? Like if people want to connect with you more and learn more about breath work, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, right now I'm on Instagram. That's my main channel. LinkedIn, Instagram, email.
I'll definitely put put your LinkedIn and Instagram handles on there. Awesome. Email, I'll let people DM you in, because I don't unless you really want to share that information. But anyway, but yeah, I'll be sure, guys, make sure to connect with Collin, and I would highly recommend that you definitely attempt holding your breath, doing push-ups, and then sprinting. Rock your world. And then of course all of us, let's do that 20-minute or 10-minute, we're starting at 10-minute exercise.
Try for 10.
And then it's 8 inhale, 4 hold, 8 exhale, hold, 4 seconds, right? That's the pattern. Cool.
That's the pattern.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and give that a go. Collin, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing so much of your wisdom and your story. And then we look forward to seeing you Wash Park if you're in Denver. Make sure that we can go support Collin while he runs.
Last weekend in March. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. All right, man. Everybody, this is Coach Steve, as always, saying, never conform.